This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Heisler Paterson and Michael Remis.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Let's do this. Welcome to another afternoon here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Andrew Paterson along with Michael Remis, and we have a big show coming up. Lots of hockey talk with Winnipeg Jets training camp beginning tomorrow and NHL training camps opening around the league in many locales today. We will be speaking with Dennis Bernstein of the Fourth Period in our first guest segment, and then we'll focus in on the Winnipeg Jets with our old pal Rennie, Sean Reynolds of Sportsnet. He and Kenny are going to be getting the KNR show going tomorrow after Winnipeg Sports Talk right here live on YouTube, so make sure to stick around tomorrow for that program. We'll get Rennie's thoughts on the Jets offseason, the upcoming training camp, and more coming up on today's program. After a lot of hockey talk, we'll also get ready for Week 3 in the National Football League. Ben Heisler from Fansided and Betsided is going to pop by. Oh, and for those of you with us live on YouTube, make sure to stick around until the end of the program because it's been a little while, but we have a big unboxing for this afternoon. And not one box, but two boxes, one in each spot for today's Winnipeg Sports Talk. So it's been a little while since we rocked an unboxing. Very much looking forward to that. So be sure to stick around. A big shout out to our sponsors before we get going. Manitoba Battery, Royal Sports, Canadian Club, Not Auto Corp, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Boston Pizza, Little Brown Jug Brewing, Assiniboia Downs, and of course, our great betting partners at Coolbet Canada. Let's get Remis in here to get things going. Remo, how are you? What's up? Long time no see.
Yeah, you and I had our first in-person Winnipeg Sports Talk meeting since we started, 140 shows in, like the first extended sit-down. I think I've seen you a couple times in person, but this was our first. I know we were at Boston Pizza, but that was kind of a group thing. This was an
actual. Okay, let's get together. There's a bunch of things we got to go over, talk about, get ready for hockey season, and live in person. 6 months in, an in-person meeting for Winnipeg Sports.
But to be we had a lot of phone meetings and stuff, and Zoom meetings. Like we've had meetings, but this was the first in-person meeting. So.
Yeah, and shout out to our friends at Sal's. Great morning. You hadn't been there in like 2 years.
I love Sal's. Yeah, I grew up going with my dad and going after hockey and, after school. And yeah, I love going to Sal's, but I don't think I had been in at least 2 years for sure. Just because of, I hadn't been to a restaurant for a year period until like May or June. I think it was June or July. It was the first time I had sat in a restaurant, even now, even still. So, yeah, it was awesome. I love Sal's.
I live at that place, the Pembina and Stafford one. As a guy that lives alone, hates cooking for one, it is just so close. It's so damn good. And, I don't usually get there that early. They had a couple killer breakfast specials as well. Anyways, we won't talk about Sal's for 10 minutes.
Oh,
but,
I could
it was
do that.
bumping today, though. It was bumping.
It was packed there. I was packed. Yeah, very so busy.
Nice to see some things sort of coming back to normal. But let's get to it. We're going to focus in on the Winnipeg Jets a little bit later on with Sean Reynolds. And of course, tomorrow, the big day, Winnipeg Jet training camp officially opens at the Iceplex. But Remo, lots going on around the league. And, we'll get to the contracts in a minute. But I'll tell you what is really interesting and dominating the headlines today. And I think I sort of called this yesterday on the program that, the next few days is going to be one general manager or coach after another talking about the beginning of training camp and discussing the vaccination status of his club. Now, I'll say this. Mike McIntyre tweeted this out. I think everyone is hoping that he is bang on this. His quote was, he expects tomorrow the team to announce that they're 100% vaccinated. That certainly is not the case throughout the league today, Remis. And we're learning that Tyler Bertuzzi is not getting the vaccine, and he's going to miss a number of games this season. And Ken Holland today in Edmonton said the team could have one unvaccinated player on the roster this season and estimates that this player would miss roughly 30 games due to quarantine and border issues. That is significant. I mean, that is really significant. And, you know, I heard Hernan and JMO or Lotai talking on TSN 1260 in the last hour. I was interested to get the reaction in Edmonton from this news. One of them sort of, you know, jokingly, but not really said, what if it's Mike Smith? I mean, can you imagine if your number one goaltender is right off the bat not available for 30 games? I guess it could be worse. It could be Connor McDavid or Leon Draisaitl, but I find that very hard to believe. But this is going to be an absolutely huge issue going into the season. And you just wonder, I mean, imagine being the one guy on one of these teams that decides this is your hill to die on, giving up hundreds of thousands of dollars and not being there for your teammates for 30 games of an 82-game season. It's I know for many of it's hard to wrap your head around, but that is where we're at right now. And that to me is going to be the big story these next few days, finding out what teams are going to be dealing with this as opposed to the others that are all business with everybody all in and 100% shot up.
Yeah, I agree. I was definitely surprised to see Tyler Bertuzzi say he's not vaccinated. So can't play games in Canada because you'd have to quarantine crossing the border. And he's also giving up, I think it was Stephen Wino saying $450,000. Imagine giving up that much. But also, I mean, all your teammates are doing that. You're all in together, and you're the one guy who's saying, you're bigger than the team, I guess. So I think it is something we're going to be watching. And now if you're drafting fantasy, I guess you'd have to bump down Tyler Bertuzzi on your list because he can't play games in Canada. And for the Oilers,
we need to know these players before any drafting takes place.
Before any drafting. So it is valid if you're drafting. I mean, you need to know if they can't play across the border. So this is, the first day of training camp. I mean, this is what people are asking about, and we're relaying those details here. And we actually did have some details that just came out from Scott Billick and Mike McIntyre. The Jets are saying fans will be allowed inside the rinks at Iceplex to watch training camp Thursday. You must be fully vaccinated. Seating will be limited. 250 people total for the 3 rinks. Lobby viewing as well. All skates daily at 10 a.m. So I know some people were upset that, you had to watch through the glass, socially distance. And I guess, does that really make sense when they're going to be allowing 15,000 people into the arena on Sunday and just had, however many at the 90s concert last night, Huss? I don't know if you went to Aqua and Vanga Boys, but I saw some Instagram stories. It looked like a good time. So there's an update for Jets fans there. So, all these new protocols, all the stuff, it's kind of just coming out. And Joe from Winnipeg does mention Alex Stalock for the Oilers. This came out today that he's out because he had a heart issue after having COVID. And that actually happened last season with Eduardo Rodriguez, the pitcher for the Red Sox who didn't pitch. He's pitching again this year, but he had to sit out. He also had a heart issue from COVID. So, I mean, pick which one you'd rather have at this point. I think the choice is pretty easy.
Yeah, that is, I mean, you hate to hear that. But this is real. And, there are some people that, are dealing with effects of getting the virus, and it's affecting them, long term. And Alex Stalock, I think, was going to be in the mix for significant playing time with the Oilers. I mean, they weren't getting rid of Koskinen. He's on the final year of their deal. Mike Smith is an older goaltender, and I think they're counting on him to play a lot, but you're not entirely sure as to how that will go. And Stalock was going to be a big part of that mix, I think, at Edmonton this year. Well, he's gone, in all likelihood, not playing this season. So now you've got Stuart Skinner as goalie number 3. And they don't have a Connor Hellebuck that they're going to be riding for 65 games plus a year. So that Oiler goaltending situation got a little more sketchy today, but unfortunately, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, this is a serious health issue for Alex Stalock, who, from all accounts, is not going to be playing so far this season. So we'll focus in on the Jets' upcoming training camp a little bit later on. As I mentioned, Dennis Bernstein's going to join us in a few minutes, and we'll talk about the big stories in and around the league. We have had a few signings, Remis, and the big one was yesterday afternoon after we got off the air. I was actually on the air with Pat Steinberg on Sportsnet 960 as this news broke, and we kicked it around for a good period of time. Kirill Kaprizov gets it done with the Minnesota Wild, $9 million a year, 5-year term. They buy 2 years of unrestricted free agency. He'll be 29 years old when the deal expires. Tell you what, I mean, I think it's fair. I mean, the money's fair for a player that did what he did for Minnesota last year, and he was the number one priority for Bill Guerin to get done. Great news for Minnesota fans that they know this guy's going to be in the mix for a minimum of 5 years, and they've got some cap certainty going forward. But I'll be honest, we talked about the deal for 30 seconds, and then it got me thinking, Jim Benning is screwed in Vancouver right now with Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes, both unsigned, less than $11 million in cap space. That signing did not make Jim Benning's job any easier today. And I know he was meeting the media today, basically just as we went on to the air. So lots of questions and not enough answers right now in Vancouver, as the Canucks did a whole bunch of things this offseason, but they left maybe the two most important things until the end in Pettersson and Quinn Hughes. And not an enviable position for Jim Benning to be going into training camp. And I imagine he's hearing it right now from the Canuck faithful.
Yeah, just as far as the Kaprizov signing goes, I know it sounds like a lot of money for a guy who's 24. I think the crazy part is he's played 55 NHL games, but he was well established in the KHL before. I think you know what kind of player he is. You know,
they waited 5 years for him to come to North America. They were patient.
Yeah, he's a top player in the league. And, just because he's an RFA, normally the players don't really have any leverage. But he said, hey, look, I can just go back. I guess he said, I'll just go back to Russia and make, what I'm worth if you don't want to pay me. And maybe they did pay. Maybe it was a slight overpay. But for a guy in his prime years, €9 million, I mean, I don't think it's... I mean, it seems insane because he hasn't played that much, but I mean, you lock up your young guys and you pay him. It's not giving that contract to a guy who's 29 or 30. So I think it's more reasonable. I mean, if you're gonna overpay anyone, overpay your best players, and you need to keep that guy. You can't have him go back to Russia, Huss, but now you got $14 million in dead cap space for 3 years after this. That's going to be the crazy part. So you have Kaprizov. And then the Parise Suter buyout. So
better have some good guys on ELCs over the course of those 3 years where they're eating up $14 million in cap space on the buyouts that they gave out to Parise and Suter earlier this summer.
Well, one guy I saw Tracy mention, it was Marco Rossi, who had COVID complications last year, who seems to be 100% this year, and they're definitely counting on him, I think, to be a player. But I'm looking at the cap friendly, not exactly following the chat. I'm not sure what the reaction here in chat is about the Kaprizov signing. But I think you're seeing this more, that we know players are the best from age 24 to like 29. Give them the big contracts when they're, when they're RFAs, rather than giving the UFAs when they come, around 29, a 6-year deal. Because we've seen so many of those bust. And I think, I think it'll work out for Minnesota here.
Yeah, you can argue that maybe he's getting a premium a little bit more. Bottom line is, this guy came in and completely changed the look of the Minnesota Wild. Mm-hmm. I mean, I laughed. We talked about this yesterday in Calgary. I mean, the Wild, people literally called them the boring Wild. We used to get texts to the text line all the time. Oh, great, another Wild game. Bring the smelling salts to keep you up through it. Well, that was completely different last year with Kaprizov. And, some will argue that maybe the Wild team numbers were inflated a little bit because of some of the teams that they got to play on a regular basis in the setup of last year's divisions. But I'll tell you what, this guy was scoring on a 40-plus goal pace for an 82-game season, just slightly under a point a game, and was the offensive driver for the Minnesota Wild. So Bill Guerin had to get it done. They've got their guy going forward. But how this affects what's happened in Vancouver, to me, is fascinating. Buffalo, I know there's a lot of talk about Jack Eichel, there wasn't as much talk about former number 1 overall pick Rasmus Dahlin, Reem, but Dahlin gets a deal, bridge deal, 3 years, $6 million a season. I think it's fair. Again, you could argue that maybe based on what he's done so far, maybe a bit of an overpay. Certainly an incredibly talented player and a guy that's dealt with a lot. I don't envy a rookie going in, playing big minutes on the blue line, playing for a team in disarray like the Sabres have been the last few years.
Yeah, it's been a rough go. He's a former first overall pick. I mean, maybe it seems a bit high, but I mean, who else? Who else do they really? What was it? We were talking about the Casey Middlestat one. Was it him getting a 3-year deal with 2.5 AV? I mean, he's one of their top scorers. So, I mean, he's their top guy, and then it kind of sets the market for the rest of them. So, I mean, $6 million. That's only, what is that, like double what Derek Forbort got?
Exactly. That's double. That can get you 2 Forborts on the open market.
I mean, he's a number 1 D. I think this one could work out. He's only... I mean, he feels like he's been around for a while. He's only 21 years old, so I mean, I don't mind giving these young guys the big money early, because then maybe they pay it off, rather than giving them the well, you were really good before contract that we've seen. So I think the way contracts, we're seeing it now, that the way they're handing out the money has changed quite a bit in the NHL. I know we had heard about the cap crunch. The flat cap's not affecting elite talent. Although you can argue it didn't affect bottom talent too, as when you go to Vancouver and talk about their free agent deals.
Well, this whole conversation about Vancouver, and we'll get to this with Dennis coming up in a few minutes. I mean, to think that they went and spent $10 million on Pullman and gave Travis Hamonic $3 million a year, all this, when they didn't have Paterson or Hughes signed, is insane. I mean, imagine if a few years ago, when the Jets were trying to sign Laine and Kyle Connor, knowing that it was probably going to take up about $15 million in cap space, that they went and signed 2 depth defensemen for $5.5 million a year, and then only had $10.5 million to sign these 2 players. Like, how would have that worked out? Well, not very well, I can tell you that. Now, you can't say the Jets, for that offseason, to a greater extent, were paralyzed. I mean, they weren't able to do a lot of those things because they knew exactly what the priorities were, and it took some time to get it done. But to be perfectly honest, I mean, that was what they had to do. And that isn't what's happened in Vancouver. And we'll get to it with Dennis in a few minutes, just exactly how they move forward, as well as his reaction to some of the signings, as well as some of the unvaccinated players and what they're going to have to be going through this year in the National Hockey League. Before we do that, big shout out to our friend Donnie and the gang down at Manitoba Battery, our newest sponsor on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Manitoba Battery are the battery experts, giving the best products at the best price anywhere in the city of Winnipeg, and they'll deliver it right to you. Find them at 1026 Logan. Give them a call at 783-8787. And find them online at manitobabattery.com. As I mentioned, it'll cost you less to pick up the phone and get the Manitoba Battery guys to deliver it to your house than it will to leave your place, go to Costco, find it, buy it, deal with parking and all that. Make it safe, make it easy, and make it quick and at the best price with Manitoba Battery. Find out more with all they've got going online at manitobabattery.ca. And it's not just for your car, industrial, farm, motorsport, Sea-Doo, sleds, even backup supply batteries. And they've got that fall special right now on the $20 maintainer for your summer car or boat right now. So that sucker is one turn and on come springtime. Also want to thank our friends at Royal Sports. Popped in there earlier today, and holy smokes, are they ready to go for the upcoming season. A ton of new NHL merchandise, a huge selection of Bomber merchandise, all the great new NFL merchandise. Not to mention, they are the biggest hockey superstore in Winnipeg, ready to go for the year. And I talked to the guys last night. With this worldwide bicycle shortage, a ton of bikes just came in. And this normally wouldn't be a time where people are buying bikes, but they've been so hard to get this summer. So if you are thinking about, a bike, maybe a Christmas present, Royal Sports is the place. You know where to go, folks. 750 Pembina Highway. And a big shout out to our friends at Canadian Club, our official spirit here on Winnipeg Sports Talk, and the official spirit of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. You'll be able to have a delicious CC and Coke or a CC and Ginger at the next Winnipeg Blue Bombers game, you'll also be able to pick it up at your local Manitoba liquor marts. And coming next week, a very special collab between Winnipeg Sports Talk and Canadian Club with some great merch that you'll have a chance to win right here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. All right, let's get to some puck talk. Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet coming up, focusing on the Winnipeg Jets in a few minutes. Right now, though, let's hit all the big stories in the National Hockey League with Dennis Bernstein from the fourth period. DB, what is up? How are you doing? And are you ready for some hockey? It's just about here.
Hustler, you brought me back on Winnipeg Sports Talk. Happy to be with you. Absolutely. I'm raring to go. I went to the Arizona Coyotes rookie tournament over the weekend. Can't wait for puck for real in a couple of weeks.
Coyotes rookie tournament. I mean, that might very well be their starting lineup this year. I mean, I can't imagine what the Coyotes rookie tournament is like or what it'll be in the next few years with all the picks that they've acquired, but not without a cost. I mean, most of the top players on their team have found other spots to play this year.
Sure, especially when I watched the Vancouver media availability and OEL and Connor Garland on the day. So, yeah, it's going to be a tough year, but they're going that route. The Dylan Gunther kid looked good. I mean, the kid has a legitimate shot. You knew that coming in to the draft, but he looks good. But it's going to be a long process for this team. And the hope is, and they still hope, also to get a building on the east side of the valley, either in Tempe or Scottsdale. That's the hope. And I actually made the drive because we were staying in Scottsdale. Because the rookie tournament was split between Gila River and Glendale and Scottsdale, where the ice did, where they practice. And it's a long drive. It reminded me of why they can't draw there on a Tuesday night against Columbus, because it's where the money is in that market is on the east side of the valley. And it's just a long drive from Glendale. I get it. It's a great facility. It's a really nice area where they built it. But it's not where the money is, not where season ticket holders are. So it's going to be a challenge for this team if they don't get a building to stay in that market.
Yeah, no doubt. And that'll be a story that will follow throughout the year. Listen, I want to get to the deals that were signed. I want to get to the deals that haven't been signed yet. But we knew that this would come. Training camp's beginning. And the topic right now throughout the National Hockey League has been the buy-in of NHL players to being vaccinated and being in line with all the protocols. And not surprisingly, we're now hearing about a few players. I mean, Bill Daly said they were really proud, 98 to 99% of players, but that means it's a very small group, 10 to 15. Well, we heard one today, Tyler Bertuzzi is not vaccinated. He's going to be missing a number of games this year. And Ken Holland today said that they still do have one unvaccinated player that could be missing up to 30 games this season, and the pay that comes along with that. Dennis, what do you make of the situation the NHL is in? Are they in a really good spot? But considering how few players are, how problematic will this be for the players and their teams, the ones that don't get to 100?
I think it's problematic for the guys in the room, and we could talk about it, and fans could talk about it on Twitter, but the players are accountable to their teammates in the room. And if you're a player of consequence, whoever that player is on Edmonton, and you miss 30 games and you miss the playoffs by 2 points, then what do you say? And I get Tyler Bertuzzi. Now, Tyler can't travel to Canada for games. I assume they're going to have to be acceptable because Stevie Eiserman said it best, Hustler. You can't force these players to get vaccinated. I think it's the wrong choice they're making. Don't want to be too judgmental. But the only way we're going to get out of this is if everybody, especially here in the States, would get vaccinated. That's the one path, clearly, to get to a point where it's going to be safer for everybody, where I don't have to wear a mask and be 6 feet distance from either the players or Todd McClellan with respect to media availability. So that's where it's going. I assume it's going to affect it, but I don't think what we're going to see, Hustler, is what we saw last season with Vancouver and with Dallas at the beginning of the season and with Buffalo and New Jersey. I think we're way past that, which is a great thing. It's an individual decision. I'll leave it at that, but it's going to be impactful, I think, at least to the start. But I think there might be pressure on these players, not maybe from the organization or fans, but from inside the room to go get that vaccination done and be, on board with everybody else.
How about from their wives for missing, 400, 500, 600 grand a year? I mean, their agents. I mean, guys, hey, wake up. But I'll tell you what, it was interesting here that Eiserman is sort of like, what's he going to do? This is a person-to-person's decision. Very different tune coming out of Lou Lamoriello in New York with the Islanders. I mean, Lou said very straightforward yesterday, quote, "We will not allow any player in our organization to participate unless they are vaccinated." And Dennis, apparently there is a player within the organization that's not vaccinated. Every player is except one. Another quote from Lou, that is his voluntary decision not to be vaccinated. The team is looking to assign him to Europe.
Yeah.
And he won't join camp. I guess everyone has a different way of dealing with it, but Lou Lamoriello obviously does not want to be dealing with this 1 second longer than he has to be. But that was a very interesting statement yesterday, and you wonder whether that will be repeated in other markets.
Yeah, I think it might be, but Hustler, remember this. Lou's also using this as a shield because now the Islander will be able to live from media. It's all via Zoom. It's like it was last year. They won't be able to go in the room. They're not even going to do a dais like Vancouver or Edmonton did. There'll be no media on site to do interviews. And I think we all lose out because, as you know, who's been around skate forever, you get the great stories due to personal relationships where you can go up to a player in the room on an off day and have a conversation with them. You can't, it's going to be so vanilla, but so antiseptic because it's going to be the same quotes from the same players. You can't go and build relationships. To me, that's very troubling as a member of the media. And I'm not shocked that Lou used this as a vehicle to limit media access and using it where, if you're fully back, look, here's what happened at the beginning of the season. The PHWA was told by the league that we expect to be in rooms as long as we're vaccinated, fully vaccinated, and wear masks. Well, at some point, it was now on the teams to make the decision on what kind of access you're going to have. Here in Los Angeles, I doubt I'm going to be in the room. It's probably going to be a mixed situation where they may bring players out. I'll be able to be on site, which is a plus. But to me, I think that's the overarching issue for me is that the fans won't get like the true stories because it's going to be the same access for everybody. And the guys who are more established in the market would normally get those stories aren't going to get them. And it's a kind of surprise because now with the specter of ESPN and TNT being on there, you'd think there would be more access and as much as an access as possible. And I get you don't want to repeat of the circumstances I talked about with those teams. But to me, it's a little bit troubling that we won't necessarily be in rooms this year to cover teams.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the good thing for Winnipeg Jet fans. I mean, we will see media in the room here. I mean, everyone needed to be vetted beforehand. And, we've got our vaccination QR code here, so the team has it. And that will be, I can't say, though, if you told me that this was going to be an issue and it was going to be Zoom for one team in the league, I think Lou Lamoriello and the Islanders would have been the smart money, Dennis.
You know it, Hustler, absolutely. But look, they're a contending team. They're going to be very, very dangerous. Everybody's come back. Except for Nick Leddy, they've added Chara, so they're a dangerous team. But it's not surprising that Lou is controlling the entire narrative with respect to either getting vaccinated or how the access to this team is going to happen this season.
Dennis Bernstein with us from the fourth period. Let's talk about some of the signings in the league. First off, Kirill Kaprizov, who was such a star for the Wild and really changed the look of that team, gets a $9 million a year contract for 5 years. The Wild get 2 years of unrestricted free agency. We knew he was looking for big money. We knew the Wild wanted long-term. They've got some serious cap crunch, though, considering the $14 million cap hit they're going to be taking next season and the season after those hits. What did you think of it? I mean, is this a fair deal? And obviously, it had to get done. I mean, a Wild starting the season without their star scorer would have been really difficult moving back to a very difficult and loaded Central Division.
Well, Hustler, I think it's a situation where you had a GM tell the truth for once about a contract negotiation. Billy Guerin was always confident, saying there was dialogue, we're not worried, we're going to get him in, and they got him in, and the 5-year term is not surprising to me because all you heard was, Kirill didn't want to go long-term with this team for whatever reason. $9 million, look, I watched this player play live last year. He absolutely, as you said, he changed the paradigm in Minnesota. Minnesota was a boring-ass team, Hustler, before Kirill Kaprizov came to Minnesota. They were a nice team. You wouldn't be scared up in the playoffs. Look what happened last season. You add this player, and granted, other players did step up, but they gave Vegas all they could handle. They went 7 games. It was an essential move. $9 million, I'll say this. He scored 27 goals in 51 games. That's a lot of money for one season. That's all he did. I know he's an older player, and he proved it in the KHL. It's a lot of money for 1 year production. That's all I'll say. But I think they had to do it. Don't have a problem with the price because of what he meant to this team and how he changed the team. Not shocked on the terms. So I think good for both teams. But you're right. Like in the background is the specter of that $14 million cap hit from those 2 buyouts that happened over the summer. And the question is not who will be on the team this year. Who's going to be on that team next season?
Yeah, and who's not going to be on the team because of what they're going to have to deal with for the back charges. Rasmus Dahlin got 6x3 today. A number one overall pick, an incredibly talented young player, and a guy that I think has sort of suffered because he's been in the midst of what has been essentially a dumpster fire for the last couple of years in Buffalo. Part of this, I think, would absolutely be because of his pedigree and the number one overall pick. Also, I think understanding what he as a young defenseman has had to go through playing for that team right now. What do you think of the job Kevin Adams did with that deal for Dahlin going forward?
Well, he's clearly a cornerstone player for the Sabres, Hustler, but you got to figure this. Like, you don't want another issue with this team, right? So you're overpaying. Look, his production is probably 4 per over 3 from what he's done, but you don't want another contract situation. You don't want more drama on this team. So if you overpay him and he's happy and he's here for camp and you pay him $2 million more than probably he deserves for what he did in his entry-level deal, you do it. This is the one team that has to have some quiet in the room once we get to the room, because once Jack walks in that door in a couple of days, it's going to be crazy. So it's good. I understand why people might say it's a little high, but given the situation and circumstances in Buffalo, I think that's smart by Kevin Adams. It's a good move. It gives this team a little bit of stability as they head to training camp.
Well, speaking of Eichel and the Sabres, let's stay there for a minute. We joked yesterday that I'm not sure what was more of a waste of time, the federal election that we just had on Monday, which changed absolutely nothing, or the offseason for Jack Eichel and the Buffalo Sabres, which has essentially basically, Dennis, been a staring contest between the two sides. They don't seem to be any further along now than they were when he left the lineup at the end of last year and requested a trade. What's going to happen in the short term between these two sides? Is he going to be in camp? What happens with him? And what's the next move on either side?
You have to figure out the medical, Hustler. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to have neck fusion surgery? You're going to have this disc replacement surgery? The one surprise to me about this is that when Paterson entered the fray, I figured with his connections, with all the people, he's going to make this happen. There's going to be a trade happening. They're going to get some resolution with respect to his health. And there's nothing. And it's shocking. Now, it depends on how you look at the time frames, right? And I think you have to reset, like, when the clock really starts here or when it really ends. Like, the deadline for this now is when Jack's no movement clause clicks in, which is at the end of the season, because the last thing the Buffalo Sabres want is to have Jack have more control of the situation than he already does, right? But how do you make a trade for the guy if you don't know if he's healthy? Like, there are certain teams, like at Anaheim. Let's say Jack did the replacement surgery and he wasn't ready till January. Anaheim is not a contender. They could wait until January to get that deal done and have Jack after that. If you're a contender and you're trading for Jack, you want him off the bat, so you're not going to trade for him now. So, and now that Kaprizov signed, there's another team, Minnesota, you would have thought that maybe a contender, but now that's absolutely not the case. They're running out of, I guess, targets to sign. It's stunning that we're here, but I assume he's going to come in at some point in time. They're going to resolve everything. But the fact that we're here on September 23rd and there's no resolution, and like you said, there's been no change since April, to me, that's the most stunning thing of all. You have to get some movement on this, and you got to do it now.
It's stunning that, nothing has been accomplished through this entire standoff throughout the entire offseason. And, in addition, Dennis, to the fact, and listen, Buffalo's not winning anything this year. So, right. I mean, it's not like they're a cup contender if Eichel was in there and this is really going to ruin their season. I think we know what's coming for the Buffalo Sabres this year based on what's happened and the fact that Eichel won't be in the lineup. But certainly for the Sabres to move on and get past this, I mean, they would like some clarity in all of it. Other side of it is, I can't imagine the folks at USA Hockey are too pleased with the way this has panned out because pretty hard to imagine Jack Eichel being up 100% and ready to go and part of the U.S. Olympic team, I'd imagine.
No, I don't think so. And look, you bring in Donnie Granato, you re-sign him to the coaching. There's some positivity here. Now, I think the smartest guy is probably Owen Power. He said, I'm going to go to Michigan, probably win a title there in the NCAAs, as opposed to dealing with all this stuff and all this drama here. So I think that's it. But yeah, I think that they're going to have a lot of draft picks. They're going to have a lot of potential. But again, the guy's got to get off the dime here. Like, I don't know. If I'm Jack and I really want to play, I'd go to Paterson and say, like, we need to figure this out right now. Like, and to me, it's like, does guy really want to play at this point, or is he just going to happy to sit there, collect his money, he'll go on LTIR, get his money, and go forward? They're not going to suspend him, Hustler. So again, to me, there's a lot of unhappy people about this, but I think through conversation, it has to get done. I'm just not sure when, because like you and I both think, it should have been done way before right now.
So what happens? I mean, I assume he's not going to hold out. So he's got to report to camp.
Yeah.
When he goes in and then sits down with the team doctors that he's been standoff all the time. What does a physical, fails it, and then goes on LTIR, and that's the way things proceed?
Yeah, I would guess that. If I had to guess right now, Hustle, that's what I would guess. Come in, do the physical, fail it, LTIR, and then at some point in time, you make a decision. I don't know. I mean, the flip side of that is you could be really patient if you're Sabres, because as we both believe, they're not going to be a contending team, and say, okay, Jack, you sit at LTIR until you decide to go our route, and then at that point in time, we'll address it. So I think they have that luxury because there's not pressure. This is not a guy who's the last chip in a championship team. This is a guy who is the best player on a very bad team. So I guess they have the luxury. And I think that Kevin Adams at this point is digging in his heels. But if he's expecting a trade, you need to get the guy healthy. And if that's what you really want to do at this point in time, you would do it. So again, I just think the lack of conversation. And again, I think that the Brisson thing is, to me, is the most stunning thing, because a power broker like Pat, you would think he would get some resolution at this point in time and more clarity. And we certainly don't have that right now.
Do you think Calgary could be a player in the Jack Eichel sweepstakes? I've talked to a number of the guys and spending some time on shows in Calgary lately, and that's a name that continues to come up. And to your point about the no trade, I mean, I'm not saying that the Buffalo Sabres would love to send them out to Western Canada, but I'll tell you what, it'll be a hell of a lot easier to do it this year than if you need to get Jack Eichel to sign off. I mean, what do you make of the Flames going into this season and the potential that could be the landing spot for Jack Eichel in a big deal at some point going into this year?
Well, I don't think the Sabres want to send him downstate to the Rangers. Okay, I think that would be horrible, right? Yeah, look, Sean Monahan, that's who you asked back for, plus. And so, yeah, I think that's one of the few teams that could do it and would have the assets to do it. And you would have to do it now because, as we both mentioned, the no movement clause kicks in next season, so you have more control of where he wants to go. But again, Hustle, who has the prospects, the cap space, and more importantly, maybe at this point, the inclination? Like, Jack's reputation hasn't been enhanced by this whole situation, right? I mean, so that's it. Will he fit in the room? I think there's some NHL GMs that probably have some questions about that at this role. So you need three boxes to be checked: prospects, assets, which is one; money, cap spaces is two; and fit. And if you have a young team, do you want to bring Jack in? To me, Jack needs to go to a team, and it's not maybe this team, but a team like, it can't be St. Louis because Ron O'Reilly's there, but a more veteran team that can set guys straight and say, hey, look, we've won. We can throw rings on the table. You haven't won anything, Jack. So I think that's the situation. But Hustler, it's a very small group of teams at this point that could trade for Jack Eichel.
No, there's no doubt about it. Dennis Bernstein from the Fourth Period. Give him a follow on Twitter at DennisTFP. So I'm doing the show yesterday in Calgary as the Kaprizov news drops, and Pat Steinberg and I are kicking it around what we think about the deal. And it took me about 30 seconds to move on from Minnesota to Jim Benning is screwed. This situation in Vancouver, and I know Benning spoke earlier today, they did a lot of things in the offseason. You mentioned the trade with the Coyotes. I mean, they signed Travis Hamonic to $3 million a year. They signed former Jet Tucker Pullman to $2.5 million a year for 4 years. They did a whole bunch of things, except sign Paterson and Quinn Hughes. I'm looking at Cap Friendly right now, Dennis. They have less than $11 million to sign their arguably two most important players. How do they get this done?
I think the question is who gets traded from the Vancouver Canucks. You have to have a trade. Both those players are going to come in at around $8 million. That's 16. So you do the math. That's $5 or $6 million. How are you going to make those moves? I don't know. And they brought in Halak as the backup goaltender. He's screwed. You're right. This is not going to be the same roster if those two kids are signed once we get to the regular season. Now, you could do some work with Ferland, I think, put him on LTIR. But still, there's going to have to be a player of consequence traded off this team. Now, they do that. I think this team has the potential to be the 3 seed in the division. I think they can make the playoffs because I like a lot of these players. I love Connor Garland. I wish they would have traded for him in Los Angeles. OEL. Yeah, maybe not the best of years, but he's certainly going to help solidify that defense. I think getting Brayton Holtby out of there and bringing in Halak, and he understands his role, I think is going to help. So a very talented team, but you're right. There has to be one substantial move when you get these guys in, and you have to get the guys in to begin with. So it's a series of dominoes that have to fall right now. But I agree with you. There's going to be a significant player that's going to have to come off this team unless Jim Benning is going to work some magic that we can't see right now.
I mean, just looking at the Canucks cap situation, I mean, I don't think anyone's taken Tyler Myers at $6 million off their hands. They're definitely not taking OEL at 7.2 for as long as he's on the books for.
Right.
I mean, to me, I look at three guys, and I don't know if you really want to trade any of them. Brock Besser, Bo Horvat, and JT Miller. I mean, those guys are all in excess of $5 million. If you traded those guys and got nothing back, say a pick or something like that, you might have the room to get those two players in at around 8. But other than that, I don't see the exit strategy out of a very big mess for Jim Benning right now on the West Coast.
Yeah, Horvat's your captain, so I don't think you're going to trade the captain at this point in time. So I think it's either, like you mentioned, JT Miller or Brock Besser. And JT's been traded twice already, so maybe he's the guy. But again, it's a situation where he got himself into this jam, and you made all these additions. And Hustle, that's to me, like you go and trade for OEL and Connor Garland, and you make that one signing, and you got to sign these guys, and you're not going to get them for $5 million per. So to me, I think that's the big question mark with respect to like how this roster is going to go. But I agree with you. I think it's one of those three. I can't see it's Horvat because he's the captain there. But I do think there's going to be significant trade by the time we get to opening night.
Dennis, before we go, I've got to ask you about Evander Kane. We've been talking about a bunch of things and calling them messes. There's nothing that compares to the mess that is Evander Kane's situation, both with the San Jose Sharks and in his personal life. The Hockey News reporting that Kane's now facing allegations of sexual assault and domestic violence by his ex-wife. We knew that this is really messy, been accused of betting on hockey, not sure where that is at. And then, of course, there's the other story from Kevin Kurz in The Athletic that even regardless of all this new information, the Sharks were done with Evander Kane, or at least the players on the team already, and didn't want him back. What happens to Evander Kane in the short term? And what do you make of his NHL future right now, considering just how radioactive this guy is?
I think you send him home if you're Doug Wilson. Just send him home. Leave of absence. Not unlike what happened with Jonathan Drouin. It was for entirely different circumstances. I'm not connecting Drouin and Evander Kane. I think you got to send him away from the team, and he's got to settle his issues and then bring him back at this point in time. He is radioactive. I don't see how you can trade him. And the one sad thing about all this, Hustler, is that he had a really good season last year for that team. He produced that stuff about betting. I don't believe for a second. He played hard. He was productive. But I don't think you want this player on the team. So you got to swallow hard and say, look, Evander, take some time off here, and maybe we'll explore 20, 30 games into the season and go forward from there.
Does he play again in the NHL? Or is this going to be a guy that ends up in the KHL once all the dust settles here in North America?
Well, I think that once he pays off his gambling debts, he's going to be making money. So I think at some point in time, somebody will take a risk on him. And if they have to retain half the salary, and he's a $3.5 million player, and he's still scoring 25 goals in this league, if you have a sturdy room and with veterans, I think you can handle a guy like Evander Kane, because he's still a very good hockey player. He's not exceptional, but again, it's the cost, it's the weight, it's what you have to do to make this player fit in. I don't think he's done in this league, but again, if he's going to start the season, that's going to be a real problem in San Jose's room.
There always seems to be, Dennis, somebody that says, we'll be able to make this work. We'll take a chance on this guy. But I'll say this, based on prior history, what happened here in Winnipeg, the way he left Buffalo, and now this complete mess in San Jose, there will never be right now a bigger challenge for an NHL coach or a general manager of bringing a player in and trying to get them to mix with their team based on past record than Evander Kane.
Couldn't agree with you more, Hustler, but he is a 25-goal scorer. So in the league, that's hard to score goals. You're right. There's somebody who's going to believe in a redemption story. For sure. Look at Tony DeAngelo. A really darn good team took on Tony DeAngelo. So if they could take on a player like that, I think Evander Kane still has a hope to play in this league, if not for San Jose.
Dennis, this was a lot of fun. What do you and the boys have coming up at the fourth period as we get ready for NHL puck drop in a couple of weeks?
Well, it's training camp for reporters too, but we're getting in game day mode. So October 2nd is our Hot Stove show that's coming back on Saturdays from 11 to 1 Eastern on Sirius XM Channel 91. We're in a couple of new writers to our staff in New York and Florida, but we're ready. We're excited. Hustler, 82 games, hopefully full Stanley Cup playoffs, being awarded not too late in the summer. We can't wait for the season to get rolling at the fourth period, and I'm going to be on Winnipeg Sports Talk with you again.
Hey, we always love chatting with you, Dennis. Let's do it again very soon. Appreciate the time. Keep it up, and enjoy these last couple of days before things get going for real.
Thanks, Hustler. Appreciate it. Great talking to you.
Good stuff, you too. There he is, Dennis Bernstein, the fourth period. Give him a follow at Dennis TFP. All right, we'll focus in on the Jets with Sean Reynolds. Do you want to give a big shout out to our friends at Not Autocorp and telling you the Winnipeg Car Lab is now open for business at Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. They'll be doing decals, wraps, tints, rims, all sorts of cool things that maybe you want customized for your car. Find out more with what they're doing and enter to win a Tesla for a weekend over at the Winnipeg Car Lab on TikTok, on Instagram, and on Twitter. And of course, if you're looking for a great vehicle, start at Knott. Why not get into the car of your dreams at a great price with the help of the Knott team? Go see all the incredible whips on the lot over at Waverly and McGillivray, or you can start by checking them out online at knott.ca. Of course, we got some beautiful weather outside. There's still a little bit of taste of summer in the air, and that might mean it's a great night for you and the family to head on down to one of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQs to squeeze another couple blizzards out of summer. You can do that at any of their 4 locations, including DQ Northgate, DQ Polo Park, the Dairy Queen over on St. Anne's, and the Dairy Queen with the drive-thru out in Niverville, Manitoba. And if you got an event coming up, nothing makes that event better than a DQ cake. Hit them up on Instagram at DQ Manitoba. Let them know what you want. They'll have that sucker ready to go quick and easy at any of the 4 Nick and Nicky DQ locations here in Winnipeg and in southern Manitoba. We've got CFL football tonight. We've got NFL football tomorrow night. The Ryder Cup gets going on Friday. We've got a huge slate of NFL games on the weekend. This is a great time for sports, and it's a great time to get together with friends at Boston Pizza. Pack that lounge for wings, pizza, cold schooners, and more with all the games with the big sound on in the Boston Pizza Lounge. Of course, restaurants open as well with proofs of vaccination. And if you're deciding to keep it a little closer to home, bostonpizza.com. All locations, delivery citywide from our friends at Boston Pizza. All right, one more sleep till Winnipeg Jet training camp gets going, and one more sleep till the return of our friends Kenny and Rennie, who are finally back from their summer sabbatical and Ken's 55-round golf tour. Sean Reynolds joins us now to get ready for it. Sean, of course, of Sportsnet and from the Kenny and Rennie Show. What's going on, pal? How was the summer? Reem, I think you got Sean muted. Oh, okay. You look great. You just don't sound that great because we can't hear you as of yet. You know what? Maybe bounce out and bounce back in, Sean. Just click out and then click back in. We should be good to go. Good thing this happened on our program and not at the start of the return of Kenny and Rennie. That would have been quite anticlimactic if that happened tomorrow on the program. I can tell you, and we'll get to this with Sean in a minute, but the guys are firing it up again tomorrow. And very conveniently, for those of you that join us daily on Winnipeg Sports Talk live on the YouTube channel, Sean and Ken will be getting after it right after we finish up tomorrow. We'll be done right around 3 o'clock, and the guys will be starting off at 3 o'clock. So we've got a great day of sports talk here in Winnipeg. You are good, Sean. We've got you back. I was just letting the guys know and the guys and girls know that you guys are back tomorrow, as are the Winnipeg Jets. What's up? How are you?
I'm doing great. I always get so hungry with your advertisements before that. I just had a blizzard from Dairy Queen, so I got that taken care of. But you know what I want? I want that Tesla for the weekend. What an amazing deal that is. Every time I see a Tesla driver, I always stop them and ask them about their vehicle. And they always say, don't test drive one unless you've got the money to buy it, because you won't want to buy another car after you try that. So that's I had a ride in one a couple weeks ago, and I'd never been in one before. And I was blown away. I mean, the interior, I mean, the guy it looked like basically an iMac on the front of it. I mean, the amount of technology in those things, and it got some kick too for it felt like a diesel 8-cylinder engine, and yet it was all battery. How was the summer, man? It was great. I've finally stopped golfing, and my mood has improved considerably afterwards. I finally convinced Ken to come off the golf course and get back to work. So we're super excited to get back to our Kenny and Rennie, and super excited to be kind of tagging along with you and coming out of your show. We always love doing that. last year when we were doing it. We saw great numbers because you've got a great following, and we always appreciate the help that you've given us. It's been great, and we're just excited to get back at it.
No, I tell you what, I'm excited to have you guys back. I'm excited to have the Jets back tomorrow, and it is going to be an awesome day. I mean, 1 to 3 Winnipeg Sports Talk, and much like the great tag teams of WWE history, we will head the baton over to the boys, and they'll get going at 3 p.m. It's interesting. We haven't spoken the last month or so, but honestly, there hasn't really been much to talk about with the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, Kevin Cheveldayoff went in, got his work done before free agency really even started, Sean. I mean, I think back to that, 36, 48-hour period with the signing of Paul Stastny, the acquisition of Brendan Dillon, and then the subsequent move to get Nate Schmidt. And in a lot of ways, Kevin Cheveldayoff's work for the most part was done until he got his restricted free agent signed. And of course, Neil Pionk got a 4-year deal, which sort of left the writing on the wall for Andrew Kopp, who has a 1-year deal with pending unrestricted free agency. But you probably talked about this, and we'll get to it tomorrow with Ken. But overall, pretty good offseason for the Winnipeg Jets, and that's certainly raised expectations for this hockey club going into camp tomorrow.
Yeah, wizardry by Kevin Cheveldayoff. Just absolutely unbelievable. Here's a guy who went in and had all the pressure to address his defense. The Winnipeg Jets, they don't lay their cards on the table very often, but I thought it was very interesting that at the end of season avail for Paul Maurice, he kind of just threw it all out there that this was a team that had been surviving its defense core the last couple of years. He had all the admiration in the world for the guys who were on there, but made it obvious that they didn't have good enough personnel to compete the way they wanted to compete. That the gloves are down at that point. If you're Kevin Cheveldayoff, you have to address that once your head coach has said that. All the pressure is on you. All the other GMs around the league know that pressure is now on you. And we head into this market where guys like Seth Jones are making $9 million plus on these deals. We knew it was going to be an expensive market. So the idea of getting unrestricted free agent defensemen, big heavy hitters into Winnipeg here, that was going to be a tough sell regardless. Dougie Hamilton probably isn't choosing to come here. And the problem is you don't have the money to pay him even if he comes. So what do the Jets do? They go out and they weaponize their cap space that they did have and go out and get Dillon and Schmidt, who have contracts already set in place for a number of years that fits perfectly within the Jets window. These moves fit like a glove, and it happened in a time where the Jets really should not have been able to address their defense without it costing them financially, to the point that they probably would have had to have maybe moved some players to clear the deck for some money or for some cap space to get those guys in. Again, I'll say it, absolute wizardry by Kevin Cheveldayoff. He looked like he was head and shoulders above the rest of the GMs. And like you said, he did it before they got to unrestricted free agency. It was phenomenal.
Well, and part of it, that looked even better a week after the deals were made, Sean, to your point, was the amount of money that unrestricted defensemen were getting on the open market. I mean, you get cap and cost certainty. Brendan Dillon for 3 years at $3.9 million. Derek Forborth, the guy who replaced, just signed for $3 million. You're telling me that that's a $900,000 upgrade? And then Nate Schmidt as well. I mean, the fact that these players were signed earlier than this summer, when there was certainly a premium for defense, I think not only gives the Jets some cost certainty for these players, very important players in the lineup, but really did allow them to do a couple of the other things that they had to get done, which of course keep Pionk and keep Andrew Kopp, albeit the Kopp deal had to end up at 1 year because something had to give.
You know what else I love about these moves, Huss, is it's two players that came, two defensemen who weren't drafted, right? So you got to understand the psychology of these players. They know what it's like to not be wanted and to fight their way into the league. Both these players fought their way into the league, established themselves, got paid by teams that wanted them. And now all of a sudden, those teams that wanted them didn't want them anymore, right? Schmidt was in Vegas, who paid him and decided they wanted to move him out to try and bring some other guys in, sent him to Vancouver, didn't work out in Vancouver. Vancouver didn't want him anymore. The Jets go and grab him. Same thing with Dillon, who gets picked up, by Washington from San Jose. They sign him to a deal. He's around now. They want to clear the deck. They want to, open up some cap space. He's the first guy they want out the door. So you get these two players who know what it's like to not be wanted and know how good it feels to get someplace where you are wanted. And now they got back into a place where they weren't wanted anymore, but they come to Winnipeg where they are desperately wanted. And what you do is you get two players who not only fit the needs of your team, who not only fit your cap, but they are now players who are in a place that wants them and they just want to be wanted, right? So those two players, Nate Schmidt, Brennan Dillon, I see them coming in here this year and paying back Kevin Cheveldayoff in spades for the faith that he's shown them and the fact that he says, we want you here in Winnipeg. Those two players are going to be completely committed, completely on board. There is nothing about this move that does not fit. Again, wizardry by Kevin Cheveldayoff.
One of the other things that, we've talked about on this program that I think will be quite apparent when guys are in and around the room and you're really getting the pulse of this team, but you've been there for years. How important do you think Nate Schmidt's addition to the locker room is going to be? Because we know he's got this electric personality. He seems to exude fun. And for all the talent on the Winnipeg Jets, there has been some times over the last few years where it didn't seem like a lot of those guys were having as much fun as you might think. And, it's a long season, Ren. I really think that Schmidt is going to pay dividends both on the ice and off.
Massively. And it was interesting. Paul Maurice had said the other day, he talked to another NHL coach who had Nate Schmidt in his lineup. And that coach said to him, he has never had or seen a better room guy in the NHL in his life. Now, we all know that the Winnipeg Jets have been open about this in the past. A couple of years ago, Blake Wheeler was open about the fact that he felt like he was taking things maybe a little bit too seriously or getting a little bit too wound up and bothered by what was happening. The game is you perform best when you're enjoying it, you're having fun. It's the one thing that you see from all these teams that succeed. They're having a great time, right? And one thing Nate Schmidt does, we've talked to him in the media. We got him the day that they picked him up on our last Kenny and Rennie show of the year. That guy, you can't help but have a good time when Nate Schmidt is around. He's that friend of yours. If you're down in the doldrums or if your girlfriend just dumped you or something like that, that's the guy you want to go out with because you're going to have a smile on your face for the rest of the night and you're going to forget your troubles when you're with that guy. He is going to, in my opinion, do such a phenomenal job of kind of raising, the happiness level of that room. Though guys like Nick Ehlers love to have a good time. There's no not having a good time in the Winnipeg Jets room this year with Nate Schmidt. He fits again. You're just adding more and more checks into the box of what these players can do for the room. We go back to Dillon. They needed size. You get a guy who's got size. It's just every single box is checked here. But I love that you brought this up because Nate Schmidt has the potential to take a room and have them have fun and free up those players. Free hockey players play their best hockey. I expect to see a lot of the Winnipeg Jets players with big smiles on their faces when they're talking to us in the media because they'll have had Nate Schmidt busting their balls right before they came out to talk to us.
Yeah, and they had Hendricks before, and Anthony Potato was an absolute card and a great dude, but it's way different when you're a borderline player in the press box half the time than when you are a veteran that a team has made a concerted effort to bring in, you're being paid well, and you're playing a big, big role in the hockey club, and that's exactly where Nate Schmidt is going to be. Moving away from the defense for a minute, and it's such a change from what we normally have been talking about with Winnipeg going into training camp. The last couple of years, it's been who is going to be on the defense, who's going to be on the blue line, are there guys that can make the lineup? But the forward group was pretty established, completely different this year. Especially when you think of Ville Heinola and Dylan Sandberg knocking on the door, and it doesn't really seem to be a spot for them, at least at the beginning of the year. But the entire fourth line didn't come back. Mason Appleton is a member of the Kraken. Sean, when you look at the depth of the Jets' top 12, who do you think may have the inside track on that job alongside Kopp and Lowry? And what do you think about the contenders for fourth line roles under Paul Maurice this season?
Well, I take a look and I think right off the bat, Christian Vesalainen is most likely to be the guy who slots in alongside Lowry and Cobb. Vesalainen's got that phenomenal shot. We haven't seen the results of it that much at the NHL level, but it's something I think the Jets believe if they can unlock it, it could be special. And I do think that they want to see, they got that a little bit. Brandon Tanev added that gritty scoring element. Mason Appleton did the same thing. I don't necessarily think they're going to get that gritty kind of scoring from Vesalainen, but they have seen Andrew Kopp be able to play in that top six. And maybe if they can get him setting guys up the way he played so well alongside guys like Nick Ehlers, that if he can be that guy to kind of use that hockey IQ and that passing with Lowry kind of moving around and creating space, that if they can get Vesalainen in the right spots, they think that they can unlock that. That doesn't work. They've got guys like Harkins they can try in that spot. I guess Toninato. I've got, from the third line down, this is where I see things kind of shaking out to start the season is Kopp, Lowry with Vesalainen. And that next line I've got, and I only say Harkins because Paul Maurice had said that Harkins, being a natural centerman, may have the inside track on that fourth line spot. If he comes out and performs, and you got to think after last year, spending all his time practicing, he knows an opportunity when he sees it. He'll throw everything he can at this team in training camp. I've got like Harkins, Nash, and Toninato, and the two extra guys are Gus and Svechnikov. Now, Gus, I think you don't want him sitting in that extra forward spot, so he's probably going to be up in that line. But I do see a hodgepodge of those five players kind of moving in and out until they find something they like. What that's going to be, I would just be guessing at this stage because I haven't seen what Svechnikov or Nash looks like here. Gus, we've got an idea, but we don't know how those guys are going to fit in. It's kind of like Trevor Lewis came into camp last year and we saw him play, and it was like, boy, oh boy, it's starting to look like Trevor Lewis is going to be one of their guys. We'll see what shakes down in camp, but I'm pretty confident I've got, the 14 forwards that are going to be on this team. I just don't know what that fourth line is going to look like. And I do think it's interesting, it is one of the areas we've talked about where they've shored up their weaknesses to create strengths with the Winnipeg Jets. I do see their bottom six as being a weakness right now. Until you figure out that replacement for Mason Appleton, I think that there's not an expectation that the third line will be as effective as it was last year. And the fourth line is a little bit of a toss-up. And the one thing that we saw from covering the playoffs and seeing that Montreal Canadiens team, that New York Islanders team, all the teams that went really deep, the Tampa Bay Lightning, you can see their third and fourth lines were formidable lines. The Winnipeg Jets want to be contending for the Stanley Cup. Never mind that, everyone wants to. They believe they can contend for the Stanley Cup. They're going to need really, really strong depth up front if they're going to do that. And so they're going to have to figure out something here with that fourth line. That said, Huss, I think they're in a really good spot because the way the team is set up now, last couple of years at the trade deadline, they needed to go out for big swings and get big defensemen. Now they can be that team that just goes and pieces together, veteran type players like the Canadiens went and got Eric Stahl. That, I'm guessing by the time we get to the trade deadline, those will be the kind of options that the Winnipeg Jets are looking for at that time, unless these players all gel together and they don't feel they need it.
The one guy we didn't mention to me that's so intriguing is Cole Perfetti. And Perfetti, Sean, it comes in, in a unique situation in that in a normal year, he would have to either go back to junior where he's already dominated and didn't play last year, or in the National Hockey League. This year, the opportunity to play for the Manitoba Moose is a complete game changer. So that is the option. I think we all agree that he'll probably spend some time. But what are you looking for Perfetti? And could he come in and play his way onto the roster in training camp, in your opinion?
Well, that possibility exists. I'm glad you brought him up because I've got in my list of that team that I think is fairly solid. I know what this team is going to be. I've got Perfetti with a big circle and a question mark. I don't have that by Ville Heinola or Dylan Sandberg. I don't think there's much of a chance of those players playing their way onto this team. But Cole Perfetti is a guy who realizes his situation. We talked to him about this. We asked him about what he would need to develop and whether or not he looks at this team and things. Because the only spot I really, potentially see him is in that spot. We were talking about Vesalainen going, unless you take a guy like Stastny and move him down into that spot and Perfetti jumps up onto that second line. Maybe you do that. He's got the versatility to do that. We all expect he's going to be a really, really great player. We want to take a look and see where he's at in his game and see if he can be one of those guys, because he could fit that role. He's talked about it. My guess is he's had conversations with the Winnipeg Jets about that, where they've said, hey, we're not guaranteeing you anything. And, chances are, like you just said, Huss, you're probably going to the Manitoba Moose for another year. But if he can jump up and be that one guy, the Cole Caulfield kind of guy who jumps up onto a line and is sheltered by a couple of veteran players who are good. I mean, if you're on a line with Nick Ehlers, your opponents have their hands full with Nick Ehlers, right? There's going to be a little bit of the spotlight's going to be in this direction, and you can operate in the shadows a little bit. And that's what I think Cole Caulfield was able to do with the Montreal Canadiens alongside Tyler Toffoli and Nick Suzuki. Well, that can exist. If Pierre-Luc Dubois is able to get his feet underneath him and start doing what we expect he can do here in Winnipeg, alongside a guy like Nick Ehlers, and if those two players get put together, that can be a very dynamic duo. You could slip a Cole Perfetti alongside those two players and kind of allow him to grow into that role, and you've got the entire season to do it. So there is a chance that he goes there. I do think, though, that the way that we've seen Paul Maurice make his roster decisions lately, they really want to overseason their players with the Manitoba Moose. They want Cole Perfetti to go down there, have an opportunity to dominate and be able to jump up into the specific role they want. That's what they did with a player like Kyle Connor. He went down, dominated. They brought him up in a specific spot. That is the way they most definitely want to do it. So if Cole Perfetti is going to be on this roster, I have the feeling he'll be on this roster because there's no way they could keep him off, and they expect him to do very, very big things in that spot.
Sean Reynolds of Sportsnet and Kenny and Rennie with us here on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. The guys will kick it off for another year tomorrow, 3 p.m., right after our program, live on their YouTube channel, so make sure to check it out. I'm really intrigued for the preseason. I mean, we pretty much know. I mean, there's a few positional battles, how things shake out on the bottom six we've talked about. To me, what'll be really interesting, and I'm not too sure how much we'll see depending on who's in the roster for the particular exhibition games, is what happens with the power play, Sean. The addition of Nate Schmidt, the emergence of Neil Pionk last year, I mean, I think gives Paul Maurice more options without a clear-cut guy than we've seen before. And then, of course, there's the Nikolai Ehlers factor. I mean, Ehlers has been such a dominant player, but certainly last season, and doing it from a line 2 role mostly, as well as PP2, if you will, despite the fact that during times of the season, that second unit was as effective as number 1. How different do you think the power play might look? And specifically the guys on the blue line, do you have a power poll of who might have the inside track on PP1 and PP2 from a defense perspective?
I think that you're going to see Nate Schmidt move into that spot that Josh Morrissey was in. That would be my expectation. I think, although, I mean, by the end of the season, Morrissey was starting to be that guy where if you gave him a shot and he had a lane to go in, he could do something with it, right? So maybe there will be a little bit of a competition for it. Maybe what you'll see is that they'll kind of do a two-headed monster situation there. But I think they really like that number 1 power play they have. They like that situation of setting up Kyle Connor for the one-timer. They like the option of being able to jog Blake Wheeler. The two different looks they can have with Blake Wheeler being down below the red line, in behind the net or to the side of the net, or moving them up on the half wall. So I think it allows them to make in-game changes that may be able to take advantage of defense. And the other part about that is I think, Blake Wheeler is still as effective as he's ever been in that power play role. When you give him time and space, he's as good as he's ever been. And so that's a time where you can get him his time and space. I still think that Paul Maurice's intention is to build the number 1 power play around Blake Wheeler. That, for him, I think he believes is his best option. I know it drives people nuts. I'm one of them. I've been on record as talking about this before, of Nick Ehlers being on that second power play. The thing about it is that second power play is designed entirely around just opening up that option for Nick Ehlers. That's what that power play exists for. On that first power play, you've got options. You've got the shot from the point. You've got Kyle Connor. You've got, if it's Stastny, you've got Stastny in the slot. You've got a Mark Scheifele able to shoot. There's a ton of options. That second power play is built to get Nick Ehlers the puck in motion with a shot on net. That's what it's entirely about. So it sounds like he's being demoted, or it sounds like he's second class, but he's a guy on a power play that is, as you mentioned, just as effective most of the time as power play one. He's a guy that they are entirely centering he's the center of the universe on that secondary power play. And that says a lot as well. The one thing that I think is an issue with that is it works well when the power play one and the power play two are basically splitting time. Towards the end of the year and into the playoffs, it started to look again like that power play one was just taking up all the time. And you'd get those situations that kind of drives, fans nuts, where the Jets have all that time and they possess the puck and they pass it around, but they never really get the puck to where they want to go because they're trying to set up that perfect pass over one-timer goal, right? And when they started hogging that time, they took it away from the secondary power play, and that takes, the game out of Nick Ehlers' hands. And I think fans see that as a problem. Nick Ehlers, I think the vast majority of us agree, is an emerging star. I think Jets fans want to see him given more and more and more responsibility. So what I would like to see is, I don't mind him being on that secondary power play because just setting it up around him is a great thing. I just think that sometimes that should be their first option, especially when they have the hot hand.
Yeah, and you know what, to Maurice's defense, he did play at times. I think later on in the season, as we saw things, progress, it sort of depended on who was on the ice. They would sometimes start with that PP2 unit. I think people would just like maybe a little bit more of an even balance if that's what you're doing. You're not loading up that PP1 with your best players, which I think in almost any delineation would include 27 Nikolai Ehlers. Sean,
oh, yeah.
Obviously we'll be chopping this stuff up for the next few weeks as we go through the preseason and get into the regular season. But I did want to ask you about some of the other things that are happening around the National Hockey League. And, just today, we've already heard Tyler Bertuzzi's not vaxxed. He's not going to be able to go to Canada. Ken Holland today saying in Edmonton that they have one player that is not vaccinated, and that player is going to have to miss likely 30 games. I expected these conversations to happen team by team by team as things get going. Certainly, I think everyone hopes that we'll hear this team is all business, 100% vaccinated tomorrow. I know Mike said that that's what he's expecting to hear tomorrow, and I certainly hope that is the case. How problematic do you think this is going to be for players and these teams if they can't get to 100%? When you talk about what that does within the team itself, not to mention losing potentially impact players for significant periods of time.
Well, it's a subject matter that causes division, right? It causes division. I'm sure you've had conversations out there. And I know people on both sides of this argument. I feel strong. I'm double vaccinated, so that I can travel for my job. Because I had the AstraZeneca and the Moderna shot. I'm probably going to go out and get another one so that I don't have to deal with any of those kind of issues. But my kids are both under 12, so they can't get the vaccination. But from the conversations we've had in our household, when they are able to, they are both ready to get it as soon as it's available. So I'm a big believer in vaccinations. And so I think that you're going to have people who think like me in a dressing room, and you're going to take a look around, and there's going to be, differentiations and opinions on this kind of thing. But I find it hard that certain players, everyone's got their own beliefs and this and that, but I think it's going to be hard for some players who would believe strongly about vaccinations to look across the room and see someone in their team who is refusing to get a vaccination, and that it's not just going to affect them personally, it's going to infect the team entirely, because now you're game planning around a guy being in and out of the lineup, right? What if that guy is on your wing and you guys are clicking right now, and all of a sudden you go through a 3-game stretch where he's not there anymore, right? And you get a new guy in there and you've got to figure that out. Now he comes back and you're trying to recapture, that magic, and maybe you do right away and it's great, and then you're that much more frustrated the next time he goes out. Or you come in and now, because you haven't been playing with each other for a little bit, you get a little bit rusty with each other, and it takes a couple of games to get back into the swing of things. This, to me, is a really, really big deal. I'm surprised at this stage to hear about the players that aren't doing this, because I think, everyone's got their reasons for being vaccinated. Everyone's got their reasons for not being vaccinated. When you're getting paid, and not every player will be, but if you're getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars to play hockey, and you're spurning a lot of that and the responsibilities that come with that to avoid this, people have their own opinions on this. They've got their own decisions, but it's going to carry a lot of weight. I can see it being hated. I can see it being a source of division in dressing rooms across the league. I am sure the teams that are able to announce that they are 100% vaccinated are going to be very, very happy that they are, and that this is something they don't have to deal with.
Yeah, 100%. And, the teams that have more problems, I think it's going to be something that they'll be dealing with. And, it's got to drive the coaches and managers absolutely bananas that, at this point, with everything that we know, they'll have, say, one holdout, especially when the league has overall been so successful in getting this done. I mean, Bill Daly said we're talking about 10 to 15 players, which I think puts the spotlight more on these guys and the issues even more. And then you've got Lou Lamoriello in New Jersey. I don't know if you caught this yesterday, Sean.
I did, yeah.
Lou said everyone participating is going to be vaccinated, and they have one guy that isn't, and they're going to send him to Europe.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, and you know what? I respect that. I do respect that decision, because in the end, it's a privilege to play in the NHL. It's a privilege to have a job that pays you the kind of money that playing in the NHL does. And so if you're a guy like Lou Lamoriello, you've got an expectation of what you want. Hey, here's the guy, you can't have too long of hair. And he's been telling players for a long time that if you want to play for my team, I've got a way I think players should be. And it may go a little bit further than what you're used to. Too bad. I'm the boss. This is how it's going to be. I'm entirely okay with that mindset. And to be honest, I'm a little bit surprised at the teams and the general managers. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes in Edmonton in a situation like this. We can see in Columbus that they're taking a pretty hard stance and approach to this and saying, if you don't want to get vaccinated, you're not welcome. I'm surprised more teams aren't taking that tack. I guess it will be interesting, Haas, to see who these specific players are, because maybe these players are of an importance that you don't really feel like you can burn that bridge with them or back them against the wall. But that said, those kind of players should be the players who care a lot about the amount of points that they get and are probably making a decent amount of money that they may be giving up in making these decisions. If you're a guy who looks back on your career at reduced numbers over a couple of years, that's the year that I decided not to get my vaccination. Can you imagine being those guys giving up a whole bunch of money and then down the road being convinced to go get your vaccination in the end? I mean, boy, oh boy, you're probably going to stick behind your guns if you gave up a couple $1 million to not take the jab.
I just think about the agents and the wives. I mean, in this situation, like, what the hell are you doing? Anyways, Darb, I hear you. I mean, this is not something we like to talk about, but I mean, this is such a big story today with teams showing up, and we're seeing what teams are dealing with it and what teams are all business going forward that we won't have to be talking about it. And I certainly hope to hear that the Jets are good to go tomorrow. But again, we'll wait to hear officially from the Winnipeg Jets Hockey Club. Elsewhere, you got a $9 million Kaprizov deal. You got Rasmus Dahlin getting 6 by 3. What a mess Jim Benning has on his hands out in Vancouver. I mean, I was on with Steinberg yesterday, and this sort of news broke, and we were kicking it around. And about 30 seconds after thinking about, okay, the Wild got their guy, it was Jim Benning doesn't even have $11 million of cap space, and he's got arguably his two most important players unsigned right now. I mean, he is in an absolute bind right now, Sean. And I mean, in a division with a playoff spot up for grabs, I mean, that division stinks. But if you don't have Quinn Hughes and Elias Pettersson for a good chunk of the season, it's going to be a disaster for Vancouver. How does Jim Benning get out of this?
Oh man, yeah, that's a question that I should be getting paid millions of dollars if I have the solution to that. I mean, what a tough situation. I mean, Paterson, we know what that team looks like without Elias Pettersson, and we know how difficult it was last year for the Vancouver Canucks when they didn't have him in the lineup. So we know his importance and how much it means to get him in there. And I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you got to buy players out. I don't know if you have to find a team, that's got a bunch of cap space and move a guy that, I don't know, like JT Miller. I don't know. You've got to clear up space for those guys, because those guys are the future. Those are, like you said, they don't have enough cap space for the two of them. Those are the two guys that you have to get locked up. They are the future of your organization, and you probably want to try and get them on a long-term deal where you can buy a number of their unrestricted free agency years. So I'm glad that I don't have to deal with this situation. I thought it was bad enough for the Minnesota Wild that they had to pay Kirill as much money as they did. I think he played 55 games and you're handing out $9 million to this player. If he starts out with a sophomore slump, boy, oh boy, that's going to look tough. But yeah, I do not envy the position that the Vancouver Canucks are in. I'm just thinking, if you're a Canucks fan, you've been seeing them try and build over the years, and you started to see them get all these players. They get a great goaltender, they get a great D-man, they get a great forward. Brock Besser's been doing that. So this is a team that's had reason to be excited about the guys that have been coming into camp. But boy, oh boy, it just seems that every time you flip the page, there's another problem and another fire to put out in Vancouver. This one is a rager.
Well, and you know what, just to finish up, I mean, I compare this situation to what Chevy had on his hands a couple summers ago when they needed to sign Kyle Connor and they needed to sign Patrick Laine. And in a lot of ways, Sean, it paralyzed the organization throughout the offseason because they knew the cap space that they had might not be enough to do much more than get those players signed. And there wasn't a lot done. Jim Benning just operated as if it wasn't an issue. They gave Tucker Pullman $10 million for 4 years. Travis Hamonick's getting $3 million a year. They made that trade with Arizona and took on the OEL contract. And now here we are on the day training camp starts. They're about $5 million short to realistically be able to sign these two guys. And we were talking with Dennis Bernstein earlier. I mean, what did they do? Do they trade JT Miller, Bo Horvat, or Brock Besser? Those are really the only players I can see that would have value that they might be able to get off the books. No one's taking Tyler Myers $6 million, I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. You talked about Kevin Cheveldayoff, but every time you see Kevin Cheveldayoff make a move, you can see the chunks of cap space that he leaves open. I mean, even when we saw what he did in the offseason and getting Dillon and Schmidt, you could see the money that was left over. You could very much see, you're going to see about 6 and change or around that number for Neil Pionk. And then whatever's left over, you're going to see probably on a 1-year deal for Andrew Kopp. Every time he made those moves, you could see the blocks going into place. It was like a game of Tetris, right? Kevin Cheveldayoff's got that nice, neat little game of Tetris, and every once in a while you get the long, skinny one, drop it in, and you go down to nothing. He's good at that, right? Right now, Jim Benning's game of Tetris is stacked up on each other. It looks like a Jenga tower that's about to fall. It's a tough situation. I don't envy him.
Rennie, thanks so much for doing this. Looking forward to you getting together with Kenny tomorrow, following us 3 p.m. on the YouTube channel right after Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. And great to have the team back. Great to have you back, and looking forward to doing this throughout the season. Thanks for the time as always.
Can't wait. Thanks for having me, Huss. It was great to talk to you.
Good stuff. At SN Sean Reynolds on Twitter tomorrow following WST, the return of KNR. All right, we're going to talk some football. Benny Heiss is coming up. Before we do that, I want to give a big shout out to our friends at Little Brown Jug Brewing. Couple things that you need to know that's going on at LBJ. First of all, Nuit Blanche, Saturday night, 8 p.m. at Little Brown Jug. You can find out more details on their Facebook page. They've got DJs, some drag superstars, the Wild Responds, a whole bunch of really cool things happening for Saturday night, 8 p.m. over at Little Brown Jug. And they've also got a great promo right now. Summer may be over, but the good times don't have to end with a sweet deal on the Summer Variety Pack. Right now, if you order online at littlebrownjug.ca or at the tap room, for every Summer Variety Pack, which of course has that great summer lager, the Hefeweizen, and more, you'll get a $5 gift card to spend at your next visit. The offer is valid while quantities last. Go to littlebrownjug.ca for more details or pop by the tap room on William Avenue. And of course, Assiniboia Downs Live Racing is done for the season, but they're still open. Terrace Dining Room Friday and Saturday, and VLTs open at 9 a.m. every day. Pop on down to Assiniboia Downs, open 364 days a year out on the west side. For more information or to make reservations for the Terrace Dining Room, hit them up online at asdowns.com. All right, we've had a ton of hockey talk, but NFL Week 3 gets going tomorrow. Many of you may have some fantasy questions. Maybe you're wondering what is going on with your team. Let's chop it up right now with our pal Benny Heiss from Betsided and Fansided, who joined us now. Ben, what's going on? What's the mood in KC after the fumble by CEH on Sunday night? What a game that was. Huge win for Lamar Jackson and the Ravens.
Yeah, unbelievable win for Lamar and for Baltimore. They finally got that monkey off their back, considering that there'd been 3 consecutive losses to Kansas City. And remember, the first 2 at Arrowhead were in pretty, they almost came back and ended up winning those games. And then by the time that was the statement game last year in Baltimore, the Chiefs just completely whooped them. Ended up winning by about 14 points. But this was a massive win. Baltimore did not want to go to 0-2. And yeah, the fumble I think is concerning. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire's start in Kansas City has been a bit underwhelming, with the exception of that season opener against Houston back last year. Everything else, it's been a little bit more inconsistent. You've been trying to figure out when he's going to get the bulk of the carries, how we thought he was going to be this Brian Westbrook type of offensive weapon for them. And we just haven't seen the consistency yet. I'm not giving up on him by any means, but I think right now the big concern in Kansas City, Hustler, is just there's no defense whatsoever. They're atrocious against the run, and a lot of teams are going to look really bad against Baltimore, but this is back-to-back weeks where the Chiefs were a disaster at stopping the run. I think it's going to improve, though. I think you're just going to see better situations fold out, considering that you've played the Cleveland Browns of the number 1 offensive line in the NFL, and then the Baltimore Ravens, which are the number 1 rushing team in the NFL a season ago. So I think for any Chiefs fan that might be worried that the sky is falling and that Mahomes is going to have to do everything, the defense isn't good, but you've also played 2 teams that have exploited your weakness to the highest possible level, that things are eventually going to turn around for them. And right now they're 6.5-point favorites at home against the upstart Chargers, who lost a disappointing game of their own last week.
Well, and just sticking with the division, you mentioned that game coming up between Kansas City and LA Chargers. I think you'd have to go back to pre-Andy Reid in Kansas City to see the Raiders and the Broncos on top of the division. And of course, the Chargers and Chiefs. I mean, this division overall 6-2. I said at the beginning of the year, it wouldn't surprise me if 2 wildcard teams came out of the West. Have to be impressed with the start of the Broncos and the Raiders, especially the Raiders when you consider the teams that they beat.
I completely agree with you. I think... And listen, the Raiders have also done this before. They've been hot starting teams, and then the second half, things kind of get away from them. And think about John Gruden from a season ago. Remember that big win at Arrowhead that the Raiders had? Gave the Chiefs their first loss of the season. Ended up putting 40-plus points on Kansas City. Derek Carr looked like he was absolutely locked in. And this is a team that needed a Hail Mary pass to Henry Ruggs just to beat the Jets and avoid being the first loss on the season for going up against the Jets. Like the Raiders have done this the last few years. So I'm not ready to go ahead and give them the division just yet, but their offensive line certainly looks improved. Derek Carr is taking a lot more chances down the field. Back-to-back games with over 300 yards and multiple touchdowns. Darren Waller remains a beast. They're getting more of their wide receivers involved. And the defensive line, they're actually generating some pressure, which was a big issue for them a season ago. And their safeties and their corners are making tackles as well. They were one of the worst teams in the NFL at not being able to convert on those initial tackles last year. So I like the start the Raiders have had. I think the fact that they're 2-0 against the spread, being underdogs in that game, both at home against Baltimore and in that win on the road at Pittsburgh, is very impressive. And then Denver. I mean, Denver's defense is back. Bridgewater's been a really nice addition to that team. He's actually, this is crazy. Of all quarterbacks right now that are taking the most shots down the field, Teddy Bridgewater is leading the NFL in plays over 20 yards at the quarterback position. Teddy Bridgewater. And he's also, I think the number is 23-3 in covering the spread on the road in Teddy Bridgewater's 26 last games. So this is a crazy start for both of those teams that I think are talented, but they're just not at the level of the Chargers and the Chiefs. So it's going to be fun. It'll be a competitive race for most of the season, but ultimately the cream's going to rise here, and it's still going to be Kansas City on top. And I'd be very surprised if it's not the Chargers on the second tier.
Yeah, well, I think the Chargers are a dangerous squad, especially when healthy, which they are for the most part. Just before we move off and get to the NFC, is 6.5 too much? The Chiefs never cover, first off. I mean, I think anyone that follows this team knows they more often than not play just well enough to win, which frustrates a lot of people. But I have to admit, I was stunned that this number was as high as it was, considering the way Baltimore ran all over the Chiefs on Sunday night.
They're just such a public team, and the problem is they're not.
People don't learn.
I know. I mean, people are still betting on the Dallas Cowboys, and it's not the late 80s and early 90s anymore. Like it takes some time for people to catch up just a little bit. But you're right. I think, and we wrote about this over at Betsided this week. Our own Ian McMillan talked about the Chiefs as a team that has been atrocious against the spread since the second half of last season. I think going back to last year, the Chiefs are 2-11 against the spread over their last 13 games, and one of those wins happened to be in that game in the AFC Championship against Buffalo. They've been bad at not only winning out. I mean, they've won outright, but they've just made it far too close considering the amount of talent that's on this team. And especially if you have those concerns on the defensive side of the ball, they're not generating enough pressure. They're giving up so many chunk yards, so teams can control time of possession on them too. I look at this line initially and say, yeah, it feels like too much, but are the Chiefs capable of blowing out anybody? Of course, it's still Mahomes, it's still Kelsey, it's Tyreek Hill, and depending on who they decide to line things up at the running back spot, they have the ability to blow out any team. It's just hasn't been the case. So if this is the week that everybody is going to zig over to the Chargers, and I look at some of the splits that we get from WinBet Sportsbook, and they tell us that, right now 85% of the bets are on the Chargers to cover, then maybe I start to go and fade the public a little bit. But for now, it's just awfully difficult to have any sort of gut feeling to say, yeah, you know what, the Chiefs are going to cover the spread. We just haven't seen it in almost a year.
It's so funny. I, like many Chiefs fans, have been through this for the last few years, and it's hard to imagine. You could have back-to-back AFC championships. You could have Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, and they're still on the suspended list from betting because they never covered the damn number. Benny Heiss is with us from Betsided. Let's move over to the NFC for a minute. Lots of Viking fans around these parts. Talk the Viking fans off the ledge, Ben. They're 0-2 right now. They're only -4 in point differential. An eminently winnable game. 37-yard kick from the middle of the field in a dome doesn't go. Is this just same old cursed Vikings, or is there better things ahead for fans of the purple?
I don't know. And I've had sort of this weird, ominous feeling about the Vikings from the moment that training camp started. The moment that Kirk Cousins says he wasn't going to get vaccinated and he put himself in a little mini biodome to make sure that he'd be okay. And Mike Zimmer publicly calling him out, and the Vikings having one of the lower vaccination rates in the league. It just, everything about this team felt like something was up and things weren't clicking. Now, to their credit, offense first two games have looked really good. Kirk Cousins has put up very solid numbers. I have a difficult time pinning the loss on him, and he tends to be the easy target on the team. Justin Jefferson has continued to play really well. Adam Thielen got involved in the mix in week 2, catching a touchdown. KJ Osborne has put up really nice numbers. And without Irv Smith Jr., you have Tyler Conklin putting up some solid numbers. But right now, the defense is bad. They're not stopping Cincinnati in week 1. They're not stopping, I'm trying who they played last week that they lost to Arizona. And again, these are impressive young quarterbacks that they're going up against, but this is supposed to be the year that the defense improved, right? Like 1 year, Mike Zimmer defense kind of goes out the window. They struggle. They're inconsistent on both sides of the ball. Fine. But this is Zimmer's bread and butter. And, they were playing with one of the youngest secondaries in the league last year, and they still look terrible. And I'm not sure how you fix this, even at home, against somebody like Russell Wilson, who is looking as good as he's ever have on deep ball passes. Tyler Lockett's off to a blistering start this year. If you're lucky, maybe DK Metcalf is still playing through a bit of an injury this week. But I just don't know how you stop Seattle. And I saw what they were able to do against the Colts, who have a much better defense in a dome in week 1. Going to Minnesota, I don't think is going to be intimidating for them. So I kind of feel like this is Minnesota's unraveling a little bit. They had 2 winnable games. They should be 2-0. Instead, they're 0-2. I just don't think going back home at US Bank Stadium is going to all of a sudden change the issues that we've seen from the first 2 games. Unless Zimmer has something planned up his sleeve, I just don't know how they avoid this. And I think Seattle turns this game into a blowout. I'm fading Minnesota this week.
Ben, let's stay in the division. Your Bears have their new quarterback. Justin Fields is going to be starting. I know that's what everyone expected to happen relatively early in the season. I know Nagy says that Dalton, when healthy, is the quarterback. Well, we'll wait to see how things go in a few weeks when he apparently will be ready. But what does this mean for the Bears? And is there any fantasy value with Justin Fields?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, there's fantasy value. He ran 10 times last week. Now, he only ran for 31 yards, but you think about it, there's a drop touchdown from Allen Robinson. There was an opportunity for him to be able to escape the pocket a handful of times, run into the end zone. There's absolute standalone value with Fields at the quarterback. And honestly, I think he's going to be running a lot in this game because the Bears' offensive line is one of the worst in the NFL. And the Browns' front four has done a nice job this year, especially with Myles Garrett generating pressure. So Fields is probably in line to run another 10 to 13 times in this game. I think he'll pick up more than 30 yards, certainly, considering he runs a 4.40. But I think what will be nice for Bears fans is that, you have the most talented quarterback on the team actually playing in this game. Whether Dalton is the more ready quarterback, I suppose you could play semantics and make that argument. But the more talented quarterback is playing, and the Bears haven't had a talented quarterback in a very, very long time. Maybe Jay Cutler had the talent, just never was able to really put it together consistently in Chicago. But I mean, this is the beginning of a new era where Bears fans are finally so excited just to see something that looks like competence at the position. And it's been an awfully long time. And I hope that Matt Nagy is able to dictate and cater the game plan to his skill sets, as opposed to having to put Fields in this magical offense that he brought in from Andy Reid. I can't imagine that they didn't tweak some things to tailor the offense to Patrick Mahomes' skill set. You'd be a fool not to. The same should be done in Chicago with Fields. And I think they're 7.5-point underdogs this week. I think they'll keep it close. Cleveland's gotten off to maybe a bit of an underwhelming start. They played great against Kansas City, let it go. And weren't able to cover last week against Houston, despite Tyrod Taylor going down the second half, and they were down in that game. So Cleveland's beatable, even though they're a very good team. But I think there's absolute standalone value from a fantasy perspective with Fields. And if you haven't picked him up yet, just as a guy to stash on your bench for a couple weeks, this is somebody that I think both him and Trey Lance at some point this season have top 10 quarterback one upside. So yes, if they're still on the waiver wire for you, go ahead and pick up Fields, pick up Trey Lance, keep them there, because their ability to run, especially knowing that that's going to be needed and asked of them, could play huge fantasy dividends later on.
Ben, before I ask you maybe for a pick this weekend on your favorite game, let's get to the Thursday nighter. Panthers 8-point favorites in Houston. Tyrod Taylor out, rookie quarterback starting. But to me, the story of this is, we usually just thought about Christian McCaffrey, Sam Darnold. I mean, a great start and a big win for the Panthers against the Saints, who were coming off an absolute embarrassment of the Packers in week 1.
What's crazy is that Sam Darnold, with the win on Thursday night, will surpass his total win total in week 3 than he had all of last year with the New York Jets. That's amazing. He's going to be playing in 3 games, has a chance for 3 wins. It took him 16 games to do it a season ago. And for anybody that wonders the value of competent coaching, I give you Exhibit A, Sam Darnold now in Carolina. It's just a system that's set up well for him. He has talent around him. It's a solid offensive line, and having somebody like a security blanket like Christian McCaffrey is always going to help as well. Now, I will say this about Houston. We thought they were going to be terrible. When I say we, I mean we collectively, people that are following this, analysts, hosts, whoever. Everybody thought the Texans were going to be bad. WinBet had them all the way at the bottom. They were like 1,000-1 to win the NFL championship, win a Super Bowl this year. They're competent. And I don't know if that's going to be the case for much longer. They might trade some of these veterans away, but Brandon Cooks is having a really nice year. Mark Ingram's been solid. They've been incorporating Phillip Lindsay into the backfield. Tyrod Taylor, when he's been on the field, has looked very good. And the defense isn't great, but they're not the dumpster fire that I think everybody expected out of them this year. So we'll see what happens. Davis Mills was a project quarterback. Even though he played at Stanford, it's a pro-style offense. The talk about him was that he wasn't going to be ready for a while. He has to be ready now. And I don't know if Carolina looks at this on a short week as, I don't know if they necessarily look past Houston after getting off to a good start, but they shouldn't, because Houston, especially at home, they've played better and they're actually playing competent football. So 8 points feels like a lot in general, especially going on the road, especially for a Sam Darnold team. But I think you just kind of have to accept that this is sort of the reality that we're in now. Like Sam Darnold, Carolina might be better than you think. But to me, I still feel like, especially if this line gets to 8.5, I'm probably going to just bite my tongue and probably take Houston. I think it'll be a little bit closer than most people expect.
We love those big home dogs on primetime games, don't we? Benny, final question for you. I'm sure you've taken a look at the board. If you had $20 and you can only put it on one game or one side this week, where's it going?
My initial pick and my actual survivor pick was going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers at home, but now Big Ben is dealing with a pec injury. Apparently it hurts every time he throws. You could also make the follow-up joke that fans get hurt every time they watch him throw. But it's a matchup that I think Pittsburgh really needs to win at home. I think the line has moved to Pittsburgh -3.5 against Cincinnati. Remember, this is a team that beat Buffalo on the road, and their defense looked terrific in week 1. And I think their defense is going to show up. So, if I'm looking at this game now, I probably would lean towards the under, which I think has been set at around 44.5. I have to double check that. I do like the under in the Pittsburgh game. I'm going to go back to the Aaron Rodgers well. I think last week you asked me for my pick and I went with Green Bay. It almost didn't matter what the number was against Detroit. Was a little bit nervous in the first half, but just Rodgers hasn't lost on Monday Night Football in about a decade. They just have things figured out, especially when he has an opportunity to give the two middle birds to everybody watching. And to see them come in as 3.5-point underdogs, when their defense hadn't looked great for the first 6 quarters of the year. San Francisco doesn't have any running backs right now. They've gone through about 7 guys. That they're bringing in some players off the street. Jimmy Garoppolo also has the tendency to get picked off a couple times. You saw the Packers force a bunch of turnovers last week against Jared Goff. I think Green Bay goes into Santa Clara and they eke out a victory. So I like Green Bay +3.5. If you feel supremely confident, you can take them on the money line. But I do expect Green Bay not only to cover, but to win.
Yeah, and and Aaron will certainly want to right the wrongs of their last trip out to Santa Clara, because they got absolutely destroyed by the Niners a couple years ago. And he's from there. That one I'm sure sits in the craw. Not to mention they're 1-1. I mean, they need wins right now, and San Fran in a pretty great spot. What do you and the gang have coming up at Betsided heading into week 3?
Just a ton of different insights, information, previews, picks. We got some teams on upset alert. We've actually gone 7-4, our team of editors and writers, in our straight up upset picks in college football. So good opportunity to be a little bit profitable when it comes to that side. NFL, we started off 4-0 in week 1, 2-3 in week 2, but we're ready to bounce back with some of our favorite picks of the week. So all sorts of picks, plays, discussion. It's all available. You can go to fansided.com/betsided. Really for anything. We got Ryder Cup commentary and analysis going on right now. So there's plenty for every sport, whether it's football, whether it's getting ready for the start of the NBA season, NHL. I know you mentioned the training camp starts today. I had to kind of do a double take on that for a second. So plenty of stuff going on. Fansided.com/betsided. And you can follow us on Twitter as well @betsided.
Speaking of Ryder Cup, Benny, I'm going to be there. I'm going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so fired up. First thing I've done in like 2 years, but it's happening. Won the lottery
That's
2 years ago.
fantastic.
Okay, right? So you can think of me being out there. Should be fun. I mean, it's such a unique and incredible event. Let's do this again soon, pal. Have a great weekend. All the best.
Anytime, my friend. Be good.
Follow him on Twitter at Benny Heis and check out his work at Betsided on the Fansided group of websites. Great stuff from Benny Heis. All right, we do have an unboxing, a 2-location unboxing. Very excited about this coming up. Let's get Remis back in here. We'll get to the Coolbet lines and then we'll finish it up with an unboxing here on the program. And by the way, we've had a great time with our Canadian club promos and giveaways on the program throughout Bomber season. No Bomber game this week, so we will wait until next week. But in addition to some of the I Love Rye packages, we are going to be able to roll out some really cool merch that we've done in a collab with our friends with Canadian Club and, of course, the Winnipeg Sports Talk merch. If you haven't seen our merch already, hit the winnipegsportstalk.com website, hit the store, and you'll see everything that is available. Remo, good stuff. Always love talking to Ben about the National Football League and much more. But I'll tell you what, with training camps getting going, we had a great chat with Sean Reynolds and a lot to get to with Dennis Bernstein happening around the National Hockey League. Don't take them. Let's get to it right now. that would have been key. Hey, we'll stay on top of that. And we still don't know who
I was muted for that great take. Fuck me.
No way.
Oh, that was like literally the funniest thing I ever said on this show. Oh my God. That was literally the best, the best thing I've ever said on the show. And now it's gone into the ether.
Nicole J, we always miss the great takes.
That is soon.
Yes, essentially we were getting to the fact that
literally the best thing I've ever said. That's not the first time.
Yeah, well, you may as well say it again. I mean, for the folks that didn't hear it.
Well, as I was saying before, while I was muted,
that was not a bit for those that are wondering.
Yeah,
every now and then.
Okay, what's the rewind? Oh, yeah, we were talking about NHL. Yeah, a lot of great signings today, Huss. Rasmus, Dahlin, Kaprizov. Great talking with Dennis. You know, the number one thing that came out of training camps today was who's getting vaccinated. And I know people come here and they're like, I'm so sick of hearing about COVID and the shots. Well, it's part of our everyday life now, Huss. And if we did learn today, Tyler Bertuzzi, he's going to be missing 9 games. And if you're putting together your fantasy rankings, you better bump him down because that's 9 games. In fact, Huss, I'm going to go over to Coolbet and look at his season-long line and bet the under because I don't know if they took into account that he bet 9 games. So I'll have to adjust my projections. And yeah, that's basically what I said while I was muted. There we go.
Tyler Bertuzzi off the board right now. I'm not sure whether they had a number on him originally, but he's not there. And as far as the Edmonton Oilers player that looks like he's going to have to miss 30 games, we don't know who that is. I'm sure that'll come out at some point. And we'll also do some detective work over the next few days as camps open around this season. Let's get to the Coolbet lines, though, before we do a little unboxing. Tell you what, we continue to get on the right side of lines on the lock shop. Dustin and I yesterday both were on the under 47 for Hamilton and Ottawa. That game, by the way, folks, is tonight. And Remo, it's now down to 44. The line movement I didn't expect to see, though. Hamilton originally opened as a 10-point favorite. It went to 9.5 and went to 9. It's now 7. A lot of people showing some confidence in the Ottawa Red Blacks that even against a third-string quarterback, they can keep this one close.
All right, I'm responding to a commenter, Huss. Darb Yora says, going to the potty's an everyday thing, too. We don't talk about that. Actually, we did talk about that a lot when Roberto Luongo missed the start of overtime because he was in the bathroom. And when Lamar Jackson,
the dump game.
Yeah, ran on Monday Night Football to the locker room. So
we talked about that a lot.
If guys are missing games because they're going to the bathroom, it 100% gets talked about. Sorry, Darb in the chat. And what were you saying while I was not listening at all and typing
I
a
was
response?
saying that the line in this game tonight has gone from 47 to 44, but even more surprising, Hamilton, who opened as a 10-point favorite, now down to a 7-point favorite. The money's actually coming in on Ottawa.
On Ottawa? I don't know. I guess
The
you're
Red Blacks.
talking about Watford at quarterback. You have to wonder if he can throw. Are they going to bring in this Hodges? Is he available? I know that Deadman, everyone likes him. He's coming back. So, there's stuff. I don't know. I guess it's hard to bet Hamilton as a 7-point favorite. It was like 10 before, so it is down. I don't think you can bet on Ottawa. I'm staying away from this one, especially on fantasy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Okay. Oh, and we did fill up the CFL contest. That's great. We did a little smaller just because we thought we'd catch people off guard with it starting on Wednesday night. But yeah, we do have a game tonight. Rest of the lines right now, still pretty much where they were at yesterday. Argos 2.5-point favorites over the Als, and the BC Lions 1.5-point home underdogs hosting Saskatchewan in what will be the game of the week, I think, Friday night from BC. Our boy Dustin Nielsen will have the call. And by the way, if you're a fan of the Lock Shop, we normally do it on Friday. I'm going away Friday morning, so we will be doing our NFL weekend episode tomorrow evening. We'll have it on the socials. Give us a follow at Lock Shop Bets. You'll see me banging out a bunch of content on it, but that'll be tomorrow, probably in and around 6:30, 7 o'clock here in Winnipeg. As we talk with Benny Heiss, we do have the Thursday nighter. Carolina opened up -7.5. It's now 8 points going up against the Texans and a rookie quarterback. Of course, all the games right now available over at Coolbet. And Ryder Cup, we'll do something on the Ryder Cup tomorrow for sure. Right now, USA -200 to win. A tie is 12-1, and Europe +215. Europe, being the defending champion, will lift the trophy with a tie. So to lift the trophy, Europe is at +160, USA -200. Some pretty neat prop bets. John Rahm, combined top point scorer, he's 7-1. Rory McIlroy and Justin Thomas at 10-1. Pat Cantlay 11-1. Very looking forward to seeing Pat Cantlay. I think in Xander Schauffele go out. I think they'll play a lot from Steve Stricker. I think they could be in a position to maybe be right up there with the top points leaders. Again, if you want to get in on some NHL futures, they're all there right now. And if you haven't bet at Coolbet before, use the promo code WST for a 100% bonus on your first deposit up to $200. All right, Remo, this is going to be fun. We're finishing off today's program with an unboxing. It's been a little while since we've had a good unboxing, and this one I think is going to raise the bar, certainly for those of us. I know there's a few people that are going to be very interested in what we have. All right, here we go. Remis, you have your box as well? Your bag?
Oh, come on. Yeah, I got my bag. I was gonna say, has tomorrow.
Bag, by the way.
Okay, you got your bag. You got a Blue Jays jersey bag. It's pretty good.
Blue Jays jersey bag. What were you saying about tomorrow?
Well, tomorrow, I know we have a lot of time for Jets training camp, but we should go over the preseason point total over-unders tomorrow on Coolbet.
The preseason?
Sorry. I mean the ones that they came out for the regular season.
Yeah. God knows. We can't be betting on preseason games.
I'm not
suspended. There's nothing more degen than laying down cash on a split squad Winnipeg-Ottawa game on a Sunday night. But we do have hockey, by the way. Sunday night, hard to believe. I mean, the guys are on the ice. Training camp gets going. If you're a season ticket holder, you got tickets Sunday night to Canada Life Center. All right, so first off, I have to thank the guys over at Royal Sports and New Era. For those of you, and of course, everyone that picked up one of our special limited edition Winnipeg Sports Talk hats we did with New Era. Everyone knows that New Era makes the best lids around. We did the dad hat. We did the snapback. There you go. Remis rocking it right there. You can check out more on the website at winnipegsportstalk.com. But listen, the Royal guys have been partners of ours since day one, really. And it was great to work with them. They've been great. And obviously getting a chance to work with the New Era folks on something that turned out so amazing for all of us was a thrill. We're looking forward to doing more. So I got a note from Greg over at Royal that the guys in New Era had something for us. So the fact that we were going to send something over, we thought, well, this has unboxing written all over it. So Remis has his box. I've got my box. Now, before this, check this out. The New Era. Capture the flag. This is quite the box. Now, I will open up mine first, Remis, and then you can get on it. Look at this. I've never seen a box like this, and considering New Era makes hats, I'm quite intrigued as to what is inside it. But here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Right down. Oh my God! It's the Rob Lowe hat. Many people thinking that after the devastating loss on Sunday Night Football for the Chiefs, I might just go back to being fantasy guy and being a fan of the league. But by the way, can we quickly check out this box? That is unbelievable. New Era. They do it up and they do it right. This is an all-timer. You cannot buy these. This is a limited edition, I believe, sent over by New Era. And this was the hat that was made famous by one Rob Lowe. So I can now be, maybe, you know what? If you're watching the Ryder Cup on the weekend, you see some weirdo wearing an NFL league hat, look closer. It might very well be me. All right, so Remo, I've got the Rob Lowe. You've got a box there too. Let's see what's cooking up in your little package from our friends at Royal Sports and New Era.
Can you put it on and maybe we'll take a picture after the show so I can put it on our Instagram.
Yeah, definitely.
Because I know you're wearing headphones. It's gonna be hard to wear a hat wearing headphones.
Well, I can always take the headphones off. It's probably not a big deal.
No, but then you wouldn't really hear me yell at you. Okay,
Darb your boxes good for a whole bunch of things. I saw that comment and I laughed.
Yeah, that's a good Adam Sandler line from an SNL skit. Yeah. All right. I think it was also in The Hot Chick with Rob Schneider, another classic movie. Rob Mahoney says, I hope this is Shifley's NHL logo draft jersey. I wish that thing should be in the Winnipeg Jets Hall of Fame. All right, here we go. We got this box. It's the New Era. And I'm opening it, and it's upside down. Sorry, this is the top of the New Era
There
thing.
You go. Yes, 50-50.
Right. So you hooked me up with this. It is, the NFL logo, but
gold.
Pure gold. Wow. That is, I'll add this one to the collection. Thank you, Hess. This is really shiny and nice. Gotta represent the Shield at all times, right?
You know what? Shout out to Roger Goodell. Shout out to everyone on Park Avenue that makes this league what it is today. We are fans of the league. But listen, we are, in all seriousness, fans of our friends over at Royal Sports. I've been telling you, over 35 years, it is the spot for all sorts of merchandise and an exclusive New Era retailer with some of the best lids around. So, you won't be able to see these available anywhere, but I got to tell you, as a hat guy, I'm so excited to get the Rob Lowe edition NFL Shield hat. So to Greg, to Gerald, to the guys over at Royal, and of course New Era. Thanks for everything, and of course working with you guys on those hats. It was a big hit. People are loving them. I'm sure, Remis, this is the same for you. When I was at the Bomber game and we were out down at BP, seeing everyone rolling around with some of the hats it's just so cool to see, and just goes to show, man, we're only 6 months into this, and the support we've had from both our sponsors, like the guys at Royal, as well as the people that are with us every day, making me that much more excited for the next half year, and obviously getting into Winnipeg Jets season.
I'm so fired. I haven't been this excited for Jets season in a while, and I am so appreciative of all the support that we've gotten. Everyone in chat here. I've been out on the weekend, went shopping to a couple places, and people have come up to me and said hi. So I do appreciate everyone, coming out, downloading the podcast. I know our podcast numbers last week were some of our highest that we've ever had. And I know, as the Jet season goes and the excitement grows as we head towards the start of the playoffs, start of the regular season and puck drop, I think it's going to be awesome. So thanks everyone for hanging out here with us every day at 1 p.m. And again, all you podcast guys after.
Yeah, no doubt. The podcast numbers have been amazing lately. And it just goes to show how fired up people are for the upcoming Winnipeg Jets season and getting training camp going tomorrow. So thanks to everyone. Big thanks to Royal. Remo, stick the lid on. We can get a split shot, a split screen shot of us representing the Shield and being fans of the league.
Let me just take a quick screenshot of you. Just look into the camera, smile, do what you need to do. Okay, I'll grab it after. That's all right. And then here, I'll put mine on. 1 sec.
Let's get Remis modeling this thing.
This is mine's too big. It's too big, I think. Yeah, fans of the league, right, guys? Someone asked me, "What's your favorite team?" I'm like, I don't know, whoever I bet on, I guess. And BA Split said it does match the gold does match the gold of my trophy.
Yes.
From the Winnipeg Media Home Run Derby contest. So it does match.
This was awesome. Royal, new era. You guys are the best. Thank you, and we will be looking forward to as soon as production is capacity is a little bit better for us. We'll be cranking out another edition of something with New Era. Hopefully Tukes at some point. Although right now the order is going to take a long time, but we will be working on it. At some point we'll get something cool, because if we're going to do it, much like we did the hats, we want it to be a high-end piece, and nobody does it better than New Era. And again, you can check out all the merch, everything except the Shield, over at Royal at 750 Pembina Highway. All right, what a great show. Tomorrow, Murata Tesh is going to join us. We'll discuss day 1 of Winnipeg Jet training camp. We'll also get into the big stories around the league. And for the first time, I think we'll be able to hear from the coach, maybe a few of the players, have a little audio for you. And I'm hoping that our pal Dubs will come on at the end of the program to tee up the Ryder Cup. Again, Brandon Ruwicki's going to be in on Friday and on Monday for me as I'm heading down to Wisconsin to see the big matchup between America and Europe. Thanks to the guys at Manitoba Battery, Donnie and the gang, 1026 Logan, manitobabattery.com. Check them out if you have any battery needs. Of course, Royal Sports, fan of the league right here. Thanks, guys, for everything. Canadian Club, Not Autocorp, the Nick and Nicky DQ Group, Boston Pizza, Little Brown Jug. Check out the website for that great deal on the summer variety pack while quantities last. Assiniboia Downs, and of course, Coolbet Canada. Folks, Jays are playing right now. Go check out that game. I'm going to be on actually from 5 to 8 Winnipeg time in Calgary tonight. If you're looking for some more sports talk, looking forward to doing that with Pat. And we'll be back here tomorrow at 1 o'clock on YouTube. We'll go for a couple hours, and then we'll turn it over to Kenny and Rennie on a big day for Winnipeg sports fans as the Jets are back and Winnipeg Jets training camp begins tomorrow. Have a great night. Thanks for being with us, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily.
Oh, my God! Oh! Shut it down! Let's go home!
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.